You ever have one of those moments where someone pushes you just a little too far? Like you can almost hear something in your chest snap, and suddenly you know you're not going to back down this time? That's exactly what happened to me the night a woman named Margaret Doyle showed up on my porch with a smug grin and a clipboard in hand. She was the president of our HOA, our so-called neighborhood queen, and she looked me dead in the eye and said, "That swing's coming down by tomorrow, or you're facing $500 a day in fines." Now normally I'd let that kind of nonsense slide, maybe roll my eyes and shut the door. But the thing is, that swing wasn't just some piece of old wood dangling off a chain. My dad built it with his own hands, back before he passed away in a house fire that nearly wiped out the block. And these days, it's the only place my wife, Sarah, can sit comfortably. She's 7 months pregnant, back aching, feet swollen, and that swing is the one spot she finds peace. So when Sarah tried to explain, Margaret actually leaned in close, smirked, and hissed, "Pregnant or not, rules don't bend for you." And right there, something in me flipped. I introduced myself properly, because she had no clue who she was talking to. Name's Jack Turner, former Army JAG, now property law attorney. And Margaret, those fines won't stick, because that swing's older than your entire HOA charter. It's protected. For the first time, I saw her smile falter. Just a flicker, but it was enough. And in that instant, I knew. She thought I was just another neighbor she could bully. She had no idea she'd picked the wrong fight. See, to her this was about flexing power. To us, it was about dignity, about legacy, and about the unborn kid Sarah was carrying. That porch swing was more than wood. It was survival, it was family. And I wasn't about to let some HOA tyrant rip it down. That night, I walked to the HOA office. Well, what used to be a model home, but now smelled like lavender air freshener and paperwork. She sat there behind a fake oak desk, board members flanking her like guards. One of them, Victor Ramos, the treasurer, couldn't hide his unease. His shoulders were tight, his eyes darting away from mine. And I knew then, he was my crack in the wall. I stood there and told her flat out, "You'll refund every fine you've ever tried to place on my swing. And if you don't, this is going to land somewhere much heavier than your little ledger." She laughed, loud and performative, like some stage actress. "Please, do you think threats scare me? Without the HOA, this place would collapse. People like you ruin everything we've built." But I saw Victor shifting in his chair, lips pressed thin like he wanted to speak, but couldn't. That's when it hit me. Margaret thought she was untouchable, but the people around her weren't as loyal as she believed. Over the next week, I started building. Every letter she'd sent, every fine, every escalation, I stacked it into a folder that felt heavier each day. I dug through county records, found clause after clause proving she was overreaching, issuing fines without board votes, falsifying minutes. It wasn't just harassment, it was fraud. And then came the real gift, Victor. One evening, he called me, voice trembling. "Jack, she told me to falsify the minutes, sign off that your fines were approved unanimously." They weren't. He handed me a written statement, signed and dated, detailing everything. My heart pounded as I tucked it into the folder. That wasn't just paper, that was dynamite. Still, Margaret kept doubling down. At the next board meeting, she strutted in like a queen, pearls at her throat, smile sharp. And she had the audacity to list my house as the first violation of the night. I stood up, let my chair scrape loud across the floor, and said, "This isn't a courtroom, but it's headed there fast. And when it does, every word you've spoken will be on record." The room shifted. Neighbors whispered, someone muttered, "It's just a swing." Another said, "She pushed his wife." The silence that had protected her started cracking. And Margaret, for the first time, looked less like a leader and more like a cornered predator. Of course, cornered predators lash out. A few days later, Sarah found a notice taped to our door in big bold letters, "Final eviction warning." Her hands shook as she held it, tears welling up. "She can't do this, Jack. We own this house." And she was right. HOA has no legal power to evict a homeowner. That notice wasn't just intimidation, it was criminal. And she'd just handed me the rope she'd hang herself with. I took it straight to the county inspector and then to the sheriff's office. They opened an investigation, and suddenly Margaret's kingdom didn't look so secure anymore. Neighbors started whispering. Some even stopped me on the street. "Is it true she tried to evict you?" they'd ask, anger replacing the fear that had hung over the place for years. Then came her big gamble, an emergency HOA meeting in the high school gym. Bigger stage, bigger audience. She thought she could rally the neighborhood against me. The bleachers filled. Sarah sat up front, her hand on her stomach, visibly pregnant, the living reminder of Margaret's cruelty. And when Margaret started her speech about order and discipline, I walked to the microphone and held up that folder. These aren't claims, I said. These are documents. Falsified votes. Illegal fines. And this, I pulled out the eviction notice, holding it high. This was taped to my door. Fraud. Intimidation. Completely illegal. The gym erupted. People shouted their own stories, fines for rose bushes, threats over cracked driveways. And then I held up Victor's statement. This is from your treasurer. He admits she ordered him to falsify minutes. He couldn't stay silent anymore. All eyes turned to him. He stood slowly, pale but resolute, and said, "It's true. She made me do it. I can't cover for her anymore." That was it. The crowd broke. Shouting, clapping, demanding she resign. Margaret pounded the table, screeched about ungrateful neighbors, but no one listened. For the first time, she was exposed. Not a leader, not a protector, but a tyrant. 2 days later, it all came crashing down at the courthouse. Officer testimony about the night Sarah was shoved, Victor confessing under oath, my folder of documents, brick after brick until the wall collapsed. And when the judge slammed the gavel and ordered her arrest, assault, falsification, abuse of authority, the gasp in the courtroom was like a release of years of held breath. I'll never forget watching deputies cuff her, that pearl necklace gone, her voice cracking into desperate, please no one believed anymore. And I'll never forget walking out of that courthouse with Sarah by my side, neighbors clapping us on the back, some with tears in their eyes. That night, we sat on the swing. Yeah, that same old creaky swing. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like home again. Proof that some things really are worth fighting for, that fear can be broken, and that sometimes a single act of cruelty is enough to wake an entire community. Now, I'll leave you with this. Was Margaret really just a power-hungry bully, or was she a reflection of how far people go when they taste control? Do HOAs protect communities, or do they just trap people in cages of fear? I've got my opinion, but I want to hear yours. Drop a comment down below. Tell me if you think the punishment fit the crime, or if you've ever gone head-to-head with your own HOA. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button if you want more stories of ordinary folks standing up when the system goes too far.